Hey there, so today we're going to be taking a look at Chivalry 2 running on the AMD Ryzen 5 5500U, specifically on the TRIGKEY Speed S5 mini PC. This is paired with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and by default it comes with a 512 gigabyte SSD. Now this chip is by default set to a TDP of 25 watts on this specific system. This is important because TDP is really going to affect your performance. If you are on a system that is using a default TDP of 15 watts, you are going to have a noticeably worse experience than this. Keep that in mind that TDP is very important to the performance of these chips in terms of gaming. So jumping into the actual game itself, here you see it running again with the lowest in-game graphics settings, and we are at the full 1080p resolution. Overall, the experience was actually better than I was expecting, in all honesty. I thought that it was going to be a far worse experience than it was here, though it wasn't exactly great, as you can tell by those 1% lows. The frame times do maintain a pretty consistent level throughout all of it, but there will be those moments that when you're in a fight with somebody, what ends up happening is sometimes when you're blocking or even attacking, the frame rate and frame times will kind of just jump all over the place. It does not feel incredible to play like this. It's certainly passable, but it's definitely not great. Now, one thing I do need to point out is that the game does support DirectX 12, and it's supposed to improve the overall performance, but I could not get this to be enabled on my game. It pretty much would always just give me the whole you need to restart the game to actually enable this, but when I would just restart the game, it would say it's enabled, but as you can see there, MSI Afterburner is telling us this is running at DirectX 11. Now, I'm inclined to believe MSI Afterburner over the game telling me that it's enabled, and I think that the performance numbers probably show that that's pretty correct, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Now, the only version of this that I have currently available to me is the Game Pass version. So if you have this on like Epic, you might be able to enable that. I might actually pick up the game on Epic just to try it out and see if we can't get DirectX 11 to work, and then we can compare it between the two. That being said, if you are playing the Game Pass version as I am right now, DirectX 12 seems to be broken. And with that being the case, it is going to be a pretty rough time for those 1% lows. Now, unfortunately, the game also does not support FSR. It does support DLSS, but of course we do not have access to that because we are on an AMD APU. It does have a render resolution scaling slider, and I did try that out just to see if we could get an improvement in the overall performance. At 80% render resolution, the performance that we get here is noticeably better, specifically pay attention to those 1% lows and those frame times. We still have the problem where attacks and stuff like that can end up leading to these spikes in 1% lows, or rather a drop in your 1% lows and a spike in the frame times. So it's not exactly a catch-all solution for all of this, but it does overall improve the experience. Specifically, you'll see that the frame times are just a lot more consistent throughout the entirety of the gaming experience. And after playing multiple matches on here, both PvP and PvE, I could pretty much say that this is the ideal way of playing the game if you don't want to go down the route of injecting FSR. You could use a program like the lossless scaling tool that I've shown off before, but I'm always very iffy to recommend using something like that, an FSR injector, in a game where you're going to be playing online with people. The only reason is that just because of the fact that anti-cheat might just choose to be extremely aggressive, and that could just end up bringing the entirety of your gaming experience down because of the fact that anti-cheat could just ding you and that's it. A lot of the times once anti-cheat just gets you and you get banned, then it's over for you. Now, I've never encountered a problem like that with an FSR injector, but for the most part, I do try to keep it away from any games that I know use anti-cheats that are a little bit more modern, just because of the fact that they kind of do tend to be a little bit more aggressive about things. And just because the anti-cheat isn't giving you a problem now doesn't mean that they might release an update for it later on that could end up actually deciding that an FSR injector is just not something it likes. It is a risky move, and I really think that you should think about it before you actually use an FSR injector. If you don't really care that much about the game, where if you got banned from it, it's not the end of the world for you, then by all means try it out. It will make things look visually better, but the render scaler, dropping it down to 80, maybe 75, or even 70% will give you a nice little boost in the overall performance, though things don't exactly look amazing. But considering that a lot of the combat is melee, having the quality go really bad for things that are further out isn't exactly the worst thing in the world. But overall, it is one of those things where I would recommend dropping the internal resolution if you plan on playing it on this specific APU, especially if you're just on a system with 15 watts, then you're going to have to drop things down to 720p and hope to God that the FPS is going to be fine for you there. Another thing is, of course, if you are only on 8 gigabytes of RAM, you're going to have a very bad time here. The RAM usage right now that we're seeing is already at almost 8 gigabytes used, and the system has 4 gigabytes allocated to the iGPU right now. So that should let you know that the overall performance is going to be pretty brutal. But anyways, I will catch you in the next one.